Welcome to Skyler Jarvis Media.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Skyler Jarvis.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Skyler Jarvis Show. This is your host, Skyler Jarvis. And today, we're getting up and personal. This is my first boss rant. This is the first one I've done by myself, so bear with me here. Might be a short one, might be a long one. It just depends on what my brain coughs up. So, this weekend, this July 4th, hope everybody's having a good 4th of July. I mean, it's the 5th of July, but hope everybody's having a good 4th week. All of y'all that are off work, hope y'all are having a great vacation. Hope y'all are enjoying it while it lasts. I just want to shout out my boy Carson before we get started here. Thank him for giving me the opportunity to do this and talk to you guys about my experiences and hopefully show you some footage of, different things in the future. So, let's get started here. So, I've been rereading a lot of Stephen King books here lately. And, there's a lot of the time my mama and papa or mama, they're like, Skyler, you get stuck up on one book. And, that's not the case. Just look through my Audible library. You'll find that I have a lot more than just Stephen King and Harry Potter in there. So, but yeah, I've been rereading one of my favorites, The Stand. I just recently watched The Stand 2020 CBS series. It's on Paramount Plus, for those of you guys who don't know. And I still think they could have done a little bit better on it, but all in all, it was a good miniseries. It was, they did what they did, and some of the things that they did put from the book, they got dead right. And the ending, the very ending to this thing, I'm not talking about the new ending on the CBS one. I'm talking about like the very end where Flag is he goes to this village. He goes to this village and he gets, everybody just starts worshiping him. That's the end of the book. And that complete ending to that thing, they got it spot on. Every time I read that part of the book now, it's like I can see that happening. And I've always just enjoyed reading his books. The Dark Tower is another good one. That's one of the only series of books he's written. I know he did a sequel to The Shining. And then I think he did a sequel to something else. Salem's Lot was kind of wrapped up in The Dark Tower whenever book 5 came out. But other than that, that series connects most of his books together. And when you read it and you've read some of those other books, Salem's Lot, The Stand, a lot of them, and you read these Easter eggs, you'll know what's happening, and it'll make even more sense to you. So, yeah. I've been rereading a lot of those, and just some of them hit more different than when I had first read them. And that is the joy of reading books. And I don't think you get that in movies a lot. Because movies, it's just a 2-hour maybe even 3-hour movie, and especially something as long as it, you know, or something, you know, just long in general, or a book that just, you know, short or long, that can't be really filmed, if you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of books that come out that are just works of art, and then the movie comes out and it's such a disappointment. They did that with The Dark Tower, man, and I'm telling you, man, I did not like that Dark Tower movie. It was rushed. I think it would have been better as a miniseries, if I'm being honest, or better yet, a series with, you know, multiple seasons. Stranger Things. I've just finished season 4, man, and I started watching that show about a year ago, and it blew my mind. I was surprised I didn't get into it sooner, you know, seeing as I like a lot of Stephen King stuff. And a lot of that stuff in Stranger Things ripped right out of Stephen King's lore, or, you know, a lot of references. And season 4, man, I'm really eager for season 5 to come out, because season 4 was so daggone good, man. It was a really strong season. It keeps you suspended for what's about to happen in this 5th season, and I've heard that, you know, it's about to go down. It's the final season. It's wrapping everything up, and, you know, I'm really hoping they pull the right punches, you know, because it's been such a good story. You know, you follow these kids for 5 seasons, and you see them grow, and you see them mature, and each season is like another year. So the first one takes place in about 1983, I think, and then 1984, 85, 86, and then I think this one's 87, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah. You know, it's a coming-of-age story, a horror story. You know, they were really inspired by it. You could tell. I mean, all you would have to do is, you know, watch the 2017 It movie. They just basically took it and made it, you know, kind of look just like Stranger Things. It was yeah. Eminem's new album, I'm really pumped up, because the last time we really heard anything out of Eminem, apart from them singles he's put out, you know, over time, you know, since 2020, we haven't really heard anything album-wise out of Eminem in 4 years. And Music to Be Murdered by Side B kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, because it was just all political, and, you know, it was right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and there was so many COVID references, and I'm just like, I don't need that now. So I was kind of a little PO'd at Eminem, because, okay, you know, yeah, everybody wants your opinion, but that doesn't mean you have to rub it in everybody's faces. And this album really seems interesting. You know, all the hype surrounding it, I really hope Eminem does us justice, you know, because if this is, you know, Slim Shady's been dying so many times, you know, over the decades. When I'm gone, you know, he kills Slim Shady off, and then Relapse, I think, and then the Marshall Mathers LP2, he came back, and then Kamikaze, Music to Be Murdered by. So, and I think that, you know, I think this album is, from the sounds of the first few singles, I think Eminem's still going to be controversial in a way. I'm just waiting to see how far he takes that. So yeah, man, there's been quite a lot of hype around this, and like I said, Eminem hasn't really done pre-orders for albums or, shown how many songs are going to be on. Like, for the past, I think Kamikaze and Music to Be Murdered By, he just surprise dropped them out of nowhere. Oh yeah, you'd wake up and oh yeah, Eminem's got a new album out. So I'm kind of glad he at least, put some singles out before this one. But at the same time, I kind of liked when he was doing that because the whole album was fresh. There wasn't any songs that you had heard before. It just got dropped on you. And, I remember when Music to Be Murdered By came out, everybody was bumping it. Me and Shazam, my buddy Sean Tucker, we pretty much all, we had rooms right beside of each other, so we were always going and talking. And Shazam, it's Sean Tucker. He comes up to me that Friday, and he's like, "Skyler, do you know Eminem put out a new album?" I'm like, "No." "Yeah, go check it out." So, yeah, that was a really good time. And then Lil Wayne dropped an album right after that. There's been some really good music that's been coming out this year. I mean, we've had Joyner Lucas dropped Not Now I'm Busy. That was a really good album. I think it was a really big step up from ADHD. And I think ADHD was a good album too. There was so many songs off that one that got put out ahead of the album, and it just ruined the experience of, hey, I don't know a lot of these songs. He just put out maybe a few singles. Okay, it sounds fresh. But instead of doing that, like, there was 9 songs that got put out, and then the 9 songs that we got, it was 18 songs. The 9 new songs that we got, half of them were skits, and half of the songs that got put out for the album just honestly wasn't as good as the rest of the album was that had already been put out. So I think Joyner kind of crapped the bed on that one. But this new one is just straight bars, man. I think that's what ADHD should have been, because when me and Shazam got into Joyner Lucas, we all loved the fact that he could tell stories, man. He's a great storyteller. If you've heard the song Ross Capiccioni, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, man. He could tell one side of the story and turn right around and tell the other. It's great storytelling, and it's his second mixtape, 508, 507, something or other. His 2017 mixtape, that took it to a whole new level because there were stories in most of the songs, and it was such a good album, and Joyner was getting more successful by the day. And then, we started hearing rumblings of ADHD. Oh, ADHD was supposed to have Eminem on it, and then Eminem wasn't on the album. And then next thing you know, it was supposed to come out in 2019, and then he just kept putting singles after single after single out. And after a while, me and Shazam we kept looking at ourselves like, when is this album coming out? I heard that ADHD was supposed to be out this year, and then now there's more singles than there is an album. And he was just gonna put all the singles out and then make it all into an album. And a lot of people were starting to do that around that time, and I just didn't think it worked because it took a lot of the it took a lot of the unknown. Like whenever you listen to an album and somebody puts like 3 or 4 singles out, and the album's like 18 songs, then or 20, it would be a little more understandable because you don't know a lot of that album. And it just didn't work for ADHD. It ruined the experience of being listening to the album full because every few songs is like, hey, I know this one. I've already heard this one and moved on. So it kind of took a lot of the fun out of it for me. But this new Joyner album is straight fire. He still put a fair amount of singles out for it, but the songs that weren't put out already is equally as good as the rest of the songs that were out. So, and then we have Usher. Usher, I think, put out one of the best albums he's put out in a long time. Hard to Love was good. Looking for Myself, there was a few songs I liked on that one. Raymond vs. Raymond, I think, was the last really good album for me, for Usher, until now. Maybe Hard to Love. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh on it. But I think this new album is definitely the best one he's put out in a pretty long time. Because it's going back to his roots. And it's got all kinds of different genres in it. It's got some of the new stuff, the rap R&B. It's got some of the older, just laid back R&B. It's got old school Usher, new school, and everything in between. It's got a little something for everybody in there. So yeah, that one's definitely going to be on my top list of this year. And then one I think you've heard me talk about quite often, the new Judas Priest album. That, man, when they put out Firepower, the jaws were dropping. They were, everybody was like, how could a band that's 45, 50 years in it and still be putting out music that's this energetic and this youthful? It blows my mind. If you think about it, these guys have been going since 74. They've been together even longer than that. So, there's been some changes along the way, but most of the original band are still there in the picture, and that shows how good of a band they are. They've stayed around and they've kept up to date without losing who they are in music. And I think that's really paid off for them in a way, because you still have people listening to your music 50 years down the line. Everybody dreams of stuff like that. But it doesn't happen to everybody, because there's always going to be, those times where they just, the music business moves on, and they want somebody new. They want somebody else to put, for people to start listening to and put them on their shoulders.
What about like Metallica or Rolling Stones?
Metallica, Rolling Stones, those are great examples of bands that have stood the test of time. Especially, the Rolling Stones. They've been going since the 60s. And, that blows, as a musician myself, that blows my mind, because, You know, like I just said, every artist that is wanting to make their life, wanting to make a career out of making music and doing what they love, everybody dreams of that. And, you know, there's so many that, you know, they're popular for about 20, 30 years, and then next thing you know, you just don't hear them anymore. You don't hear about them. I mean, you know, Creedence, they were in the late 60s, early 70s, they were at the top of the chain whenever it came to music. You know, they outsold the Beatles in 69. That, you know, that was saying something. They were at the top of the game. But the record label back then, you know, it was so hard on them. The record label was demanding so many masters out of them in a single year. And then about 1972, they were, you know, when they put out their last album, it just didn't sound like them. And then they just dropped off. You know, they all broke up because it was just like, you know, it was, everybody was wanting one thing. You know, the rest of the band was wanting to sing on the albums and write their own songs, and when they did that, it just took away from what Creedence really was. And that was, you know, 4 guys out of El Cerrito that, you know, played blues music, and they, you know, in-your-face blues music. And, you know, then John Fogerty went off solo, but, you know, he didn't really make it in the solo career department up until about a decade after he'd started doing solo albums. You know, when if any of y'all guys have heard the song Centerfield, you know, that was off, you know, the album Centerfield, and then, you know, that was when he made it, and then he just kind of struggled ever since. You know, he's put out really good albums. I think his Revival album was really good. And like I said, I think it was kind of up and down for him. You know, so many of his royalties, he didn't even get his royalties from his songs because the record label was screwing him out of them. And he just recently got them back. I think it was last year, either last year or the year before. And, you know, he ain't really put out an album, a proper album, since 2009. So, yeah. That, you know, that's what blows me away. You know, Black Sabbath, they stayed around for a pretty good while, even though they went through so many lineup changes. It was hard to tell who was the lead singer at one point, you know, because they were going back from Ronnie James Dio after Ozzy left, and they put out some really good albums with Ronnie Dio. And then after that, they just kept changing singers so many times, and bass players and drummers, and it was just a whole fiasco basically. And eventually, they got back together with Ozzy, and then they called it quits around 2016, 2017. They'd put out an album, you know, their first album with Ozzy in like a few decades, and everybody was crazy over it. You know, that was a really good album to end on, especially. And, you know, a lot of their earlier stuff, man, that was, you know, that really, when I first heard their music, I thought I was going to hell. I really did. And then I started digging into their catalog because I was always attracted to that harder sound, but I always wanted it to be musical. Have some form of musicality to it. Just not be random notes just played to hello, my sugar. Yeah. But I was always attracted to that hard sound, so I got into their catalog and started doing, the deep dive thing. I always do that when it comes to artists. I always try to dig deep down and, find out where their mind was when they made such and such album. Yeah, I mean, it's always a good thing for me to do. It, keeps my mind going. So, yeah, the new Judas Priest album is amazing. If you haven't heard it, look it up. It's got 14 new songs, 11 if you have the regular version, which I think all the streaming platforms have, the deluxe, so it's all 14. Go look that up, man. I think that's going to be my number one album of 2024 for sure. And Eminem's, man, I'm really looking forward to Eminem's new album. Whenever it comes out, it's going to be so good. I know it is. I have that feeling about it. And I don't usually get that feeling much. Last time I got it was like 2 years ago with Machine Head. Like I always try to go into an album like, okay, you don't know what is gonna be there, so you always have your expectations. But there's certain albums or certain artists that when they put out music, you just, all right, something big is about to happen with this new album. It's going to be better than a lot of the stuff by them, And then there's going to be some albums that you just think are going to be a complete fiasco when it comes out, and it ends up being one of the better albums of that year. Take Avenged Sevenfold's their new album, Life Is But a Dream. When I heard the first song off of it, I thought it was going to be a fiasco when it came out. I didn't like the sound of it at first. And then the second song came out for it, and then they started playing one live, and I was like, okay, this sounds like it's a little bit of everything. And then the album comes out, and it's just bam. It really reminded me of why I looked up to M Shadows when I was younger. Music to me has just always been an outlet. It's been an outlet for me just, whenever certain things are going on in my life and I just want to shut it out, I put on my headphones and I turn it up and I get well into it. Because, that's my way of just going into places that your mind, just letting your mind take you wherever. So, it's like, it's helped me so much over the years. Like whenever I felt like nobody was paying attention to what I was trying to say to them, or certain, like I said, certain things were going on. It was just a good way to turn off. And it's still that way. It is very much and I've added reading books and even watching some TV shows to that repertoire, and and it just takes you off to another world, and music has helped when I can't express myself or I can't find the words. Music has always been there, and I'll hear a certain song that really suits my mood at the time, and it helps me cope with it. NF, speaking of music that does that to me, NF's music, particularly the Search album, whenever that came out, and then whenever it came out, I just I didn't feel like I was that depressed, because I was in school at the time. I wasn't really thinking about being depressed that much. And then it was there, but it wasn't what it was when COVID hit. And then when COVID did hit, that album really helped me when I was at some of my lowest points. And some of the things he was struggling with are a little bit different on the album. Like he's coping with finally making it and being a star, that having everybody look at you and having mental breakdowns. And it can happen. It can very well happen. And that particularly the song I Miss the Days and Change, Thinking, Trauma, those songs, they helped me tremendously during that period. And then his new album, Hope. I'm starting to feel hope in my situation. Whenever I get depressed nowadays, and I sit and thinking about it, I could call one of my friends up, for example, Phil or Carson, or I could call one of them and hang out, or either that or talk on the phone for a minute, and I just sit back and think, why are you depressed? 4 years you haven't really done nothing, and now you have the opportunity to do something. And if you're stuck in the house for one day, it's not gonna hurt. So I just have to keep reminding myself that now. But I honestly think I'm making quite the improvement as time goes on. And doing stuff like this podcast has really helped me, to motivate me to do something. And I've always told Mom and Mama, I want to do something with my life, and now I'm finally getting the opportunity to do something with it. And it's all thanks to the people around me and the people that have supported me through, ever since I met them. Chris from Brushy Mountain Brews, my homeboy Jared, I jam with him, and then, Phil, Linda, all of y'all, y'all mean the world to me. And y'all, I don't think y'all realize how big of a hole y'all pulled me out of. And, something that Chris has said to me has really stuck with me and helped me whenever I do get to those points. He reminded me that there's going to be high points, there's going to be low points, there's going to be in between points. You just gotta hold on. Because it's a ride. If and you never go through something without a reason for it. I didn't spend 4 years in the house just for nothing. It was, and now I realize why I had to go through those things, because if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't value this as much as I do. And that is the truth in every sense of the word. And just having the opportunity to do this, I'm so blessed right now. There's no doubt in my mind. Because the Bible says that if you care for what God gives you, then He'll bless you with more. If you take care of what God gives you, He'll bless you. It's like, somebody trusting you with certain things. If you're if you handle something expensive and you break it, they're not, they don't really trust you with it. It's just, the same with Jesus. If you don't appreciate the things He gives you, He's not gonna trust you with more. And if you start appreciating it and thanking Him for it, He won't give you more than you can handle, but He'll bless you with more. And it's just like, with $1 million. Everybody wants $1 million. Everybody wants to be rich. But the way I look at it is, even if you do get rich, it's it's never enough, because you always want more. That's just the way of the flesh. That's the way of this world. If you look at all these music, all these rock stars and pop stars, actresses, so many famous people that have all this money and have everything they could ever ask for, and none of them are happy. They're depressed all the time. Look at Chester Bennington. Linkin Park was so successful. They were a mainstream band. Everybody liked them. And then he committed suicide. We don't think about it as much. We think the music business is all glamorous and, oh yeah, you're a rock star, you're a millionaire, you're this and that. And you get up there and you see these people are just like us. The only difference is that everybody knows them. But, they get up, they put their pants on, they put their shirt on just like us. They have lives, they have families, and, the stress of being away from families, and, it's hard on them. It's hard on musicians that go through that, because they so much want to be with their family when they can. Or, they just have everything. They got a big mansion, they got a big house, big car, everything you could possibly ask for on this earth. And it's never what it's made out to be. You hear all these people walking around with, flashy stuff, and it never has appealed to me. If I ever become a millionaire, I hope I don't lose my way. I hope I don't lose my Christian background, and even then, even if I don't become a millionaire, if I make it, some other way, even if I make, just $100 off of this thing, off of doing music, or anything like that, if I make it, I pray and hope that I never lose my faith and never forget where I came from. And that's one thing I'll tell y'all guys until I'm dead. Don't never sacrifice who you are to become rich or famous, because it's not worth it. And yeah, this podcast probably gonna be all over the place. My mind, this is why I call it a boss rant, because I go all over the place. That's one thing I will always preach. Never forget who you are, whatever phase of life you're in. Even if you're still in your hometown, broke as a joke, you just never forget where you are. And even if you have hard times, God will help you through them. You just gotta you gotta believe in Him, and not just believe in Him. You've got to read His Word. You've got to discern it. You've got to know what it says. And you got to know that Jesus is our Lord. And you got to know Him personally. There's an analogy I always say whenever, somebody asks me about Christianity and knowing God. And a guy named Bill Weiss, he's the guy that wrote the book 23 Minutes in Hell. And he also has some sermons on it. Go look him up. But he went on this radio show, and the guy that was, it was his radio station, and the guy got on there and he said, "All right, Christian, I don't want you to talk about nothing God on here. If you do, I'm gonna kick you off the air." And then he proceeds to ask Pastor Bill Weiss, well, I believe that you can get into heaven by just being a good person. I don't think, where's the proof that you have to know God? Or, it's something to that effect. I can't quote it word for word, but he basically asks him, he thinks you can get into heaven just by being a good person or doing good deeds. And what Pastor Bill Weiss said after that has really stuck with me. And it's basically, if you walked up to a stranger's house, knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I don't know you, but I'm going to live here in your house," that stranger's going to say, "No, you can't. You can't live in my house. I don't even know you." It's the same thing with Jesus. If you walk up to heaven's door or if you walk up to Jesus' house and you say, "Hey, I don't know you personally, but I'm going to live in your house," Jesus is going to say no, because you don't know Him. And it's just like, in another analogy he gave on that same interview, he said, if I give you directions to my house, go right on this street, go left, then make a right. You know, you give them clear directions to your house. And instead of you taking a left, you make a right. And you say, well, I'm not going to go left, I'm just going to go right. Because all roads lead to my house. And the same thing with Jesus. He gave us his word, the Holy Bible. And that Holy Bible tells us the way to get to him. You know, it says it in John chapter 14. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And nobody shall come to the Father but by me. I mean, if that doesn't make it clear, then I don't know what will. So, yeah. That 23 minutes in hell story, that'll really make you think about a lot of things. But I think this is going to wrap everything up. I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn all notifications on. That way you get every update of anything I'm doing on this podcast, or if I do a vlog in future. We're just getting started with this thing, so, there's a lot of crazy stuff getting planned. We're really trying to, this podcast is just getting going. Let's just say that. So, without further ado, this is Skyler Jarvis signing off.
Ladies and gentlemen, Skyler has left the building. Hey, bro, don't you want to say anything?